Bienvenido. This is the Week 10 wrap up. What an interesting Week 10 it was. We had a streak stopped, we had a greedy gloop, and we had a samurai that might just be the appropriate level of drunken. We will have to see. Let's take a quick look back at some of the scores. The streak that was stopped, that was a good thing because it was a terrible streak. 5 straight losses by your commish. Fortunately, halted because Alex Billy was so kind as to try and, back into some sort of, I don't know, some sort of strategy that he had working, but it involved the Commanders. And you'd think that being somewhat tied to the Browns, he would realize that he's likely to be disappointed even in defeat. So the Commanders can't lose the right way. And he found that out, unfortunately, even in fantasy. Trying to use a Commanders player against me, that didn't work. The Commander player in question did quite well, points wise, 32 points, which is impressive. However, the total points for his team still not quite enough. Solid effort in defeat, 135 points, but unfortunately, that knocks him out of the current playoff picture, which we'll talk about in a minute with 4 weeks left. So Commish holds on the bubble, but has that number 6 spot. The game that was kind of the extra game, I would call it. I couldn't come up with anything interesting about the game itself, but Chris was able to actually come out with a fairly commanding performance, 150 points, and knock down Jersey Birds, which just muddies up that East Conference even just a little bit more, which we'll touch on that as well in a little bit. But good job, Chris. Your guys showed up. You did a nice job. The Poncho Puzzles situation, that was a little confusing. It really looked like Puzzles was going to continue his winning ways, but I guess when you put too many eggs in one basket and somebody drops the basket, you get a bunch of broken eggs, losing this analogy, but that's okay. Basically, it just turned out to a Poncho leapfrog of puzzles by default, by having beaten Puzzles twice earlier in the year. John is now the number 1 seed in the East, although tied in record with Seth Mike. So we'll see with 4 games left, wide open over there in the East. Our drunken samurai, is he drunken to the point of falling down, or is he just drunk enough to start his run? 4 games left. If he wins all 4, he could make himself the playoffs. We'll have to see. He did everything he could to lose, except for that Joey was just a little bit better than him this past week. Joey did just a little bit more to lose. That was kind of a rough one for Joe. Unfortunately, the losing ways continue. The frustration continues for poor Joe. Watson has him at a 2% chance to make the playoffs. I don't really know if that counts as a chance. I guess it's one of those, he's not mathematically eliminated. But remember, Joe, it's not where you end at the end of the regular season. You still have 3 games in the consolation playoff ladder to play, to not end up in dead last place at the end, because yours isn't the name we want to change. So just keep that in mind. If you're going to do anything, at least do it in the 3 rounds of the playoffs. So that leaves us with the Gritty Gloop. Man, he just could not get enough, nearly doubling up Abe. It was, it seemed like at one point it might have been close, and then it just wasn't even remotely close. This was an interesting one because if you look at the scoreboard, and this is one I don't know, again, a little bit too lazy to go back and do any sort of fact check on it. But if you look at Hoffman's, if you look at his score his roster over the past week. He did something that I don't ever remember having seen before. He ran the table. He actually had, maybe we'll call it a straight flush. Sure, that sounds good. Not only did he have some guys in single digits, which frankly we all do, but he had a couple of guys in their teens, right? 15, 16 points. And then, as I'm looking at it here, he had 10 and then guys in their teens. Then he's got two guys that hit 20. And then he's got one guy that hit 20. Then he's got a guy who hit 30s. And then he's got a guy in his 40s. And as if that wasn't all enough and wouldn't have already crushed his competition, he adds a guy in his 50s. So single digits, teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, all in the same week on the same roster. Greedy gloop. But as we look at the division now, that raises him straight up, standing all by himself, not only at the top of the West, but also, frankly, at the top of the league, 2 games ahead. There's still 4 games to go, so nothing's guaranteed other than his playoff spot. You did see that first team to be guaranteed a playoff spot, 100% in the playoffs. We've got a couple other teams that are floating around the better than 90% or right around 90%, Poncho Puzzles and Abe. And then it starts dropping considerably after that. Quite a lot of variation. There's a large span of records in the West. 6 games separate first and last place because it is the best first and the worst last. So that's an interesting one. However, over on the East, it is literally anyone's division because with 4 games left, no one's more than 2 games out. So if everyone actually has a chance to actually take that division, get a bye the first round, including our resident drunken samurai. So we'll see what happens. Enjoy week 11. Starts tomorrow night. Bengals Ravens. I know John's going to enjoy that. We'll see how many points come out of that. Thursday nights are typically not great. But otherwise, enjoy the week, and I will leave you with this serene vista.